I didn't freeze because of what she offered. I froze because of how easily she offered it. No hesitation. No apology. No nervous laugh to soften the weight of it. Just calm. Controlled. Final. The kind of calm that tells you the decision was already made long before you ever stepped into the moment. And in that instant, standing there with the smell of freshly cut grass hanging in the air, I knew something terrifying. Whatever my life was before her words, it was already ending. Before this story continues, listen to me for just a second. If you've ever been caught between doing the right thing and wanting the wrong one, if you've ever felt desire mix with fear in a way that made your chest tighten, then you need to be here. Subscribe to this channel, because these aren't just stories. They're moments people live through quietly and carry forever. Now let me take you back to the moment everything shifted. She said it like she was commenting on the weather. Not flirtatious, not playful, not reckless, just honest. If you want to look, just ask. The words didn't rush me. They didn't chase me. They sat between us. Heavy, still, unavoidable. I remember the exact angle of the sunlight on her porch, the hum of cicadas in the distance, the strange realization that my body was standing still while my life was quietly stepping forward without asking permission. I was 38 years old, too old to pretend I didn't understand what I was feeling, too young to feel safe from it. I didn't move into that neighborhood chasing a fresh start. I moved there because I wanted quiet. After my divorce, the kind that ends politely, without shouting, without slammed doors, I realized something terrifying. You can stop loving someone without ever stopping the routine. We shook hands on the ending, like two exhausted coworkers closing a failed project. No betrayal, no scandal, just the shared understanding that effort alone isn't always enough. So I bought a small house. Early mornings, predictable evenings, lights out before 10. I told myself I wasn't running from love. But the truth? I didn't trust it anymore. She lived next door. 50. Composed. Elegant in a way that didn't demand attention. The kind of woman people only notice after she's already past them. We started with nods, then brief conversations. Borrowed tools. Polite smiles. Nothing dangerous. And that mattered to me, because lines are easy to respect when you believe they exist to protect you. I was repairing a loose board on the fence between our yards. Nothing symbolic about it at the time. Just wood, nails, sweat. She stepped out with a glass of water. Not flirtatious, not intentional, just considerate. We talked longer than necessary. Then the conversation slowed. And then it stopped. I realized I was looking at her. Not boldly, not carelessly, but long enough for silence to notice. She didn't turn away, didn't shift, didn't pretend not to see. She met my eyes. And then she said it. Soft, steady, irrevocable. I laughed too quickly, mumbled something stupid, pretended the moment hadn't split me open. She smiled. Not kind, not cruel, knowing. That night, there was a car in her driveway. A man my age, maybe older, well-dressed, comfortable, not someone passing through. Lying in bed later, I realized something unsettling. I wasn't thinking about her body. I was thinking about her voice, the certainty in it, the way she offered honesty without asking for anything back. I barely slept. Because at some point in life, wanting someone stops feeling exciting and starts feeling dangerous. 2 days passed. Her words followed me everywhere. Emails, errands, the gym at 6 in the morning. They slipped into every quiet space. Every time I stepped onto my back porch, I caught myself looking toward her place, and then hating myself for looking at all. I was watering tomatoes I'd planted to prove I was the kind of man who stayed put. I heard the click of her gait. She walked along the fence line in jeans and a light sweater, hair pinned back, a calm around her that made everything else feel noisy. She stopped where I'd fixed the board, ran her fingers over it. It's solid, she said. Good, I replied too fast. Silence settled. Not awkward, charged. She held an envelope official, looking her thumb circling the corner like she hadn't decided whether to reveal what was inside. Can I ask you something? She said. My chest tightened. My front step is shifting, she added. I don't trust it. A safe request. A neighbor request. But her eyes stayed on mine just a second too long. Her perfume was subtle, clean, warm, expensive, without announcing itself. She stepped aside, letting me enter first. Her house smelled like polished wood and lemon oil. Lived in, careful. Photos lined the hallway. Her alone. Coastlines. Cities. Mountains. No man standing close enough to promise permanence. The step was loose. I crouched to test it. When I looked up, she was watching me, like she was reading a language she recognized too well. I almost joked. Almost. But something about her made pretending feel childish. You've done this before, I said. I've had to, she replied. When you're alone long enough, you learn. The word alone hit harder than it should have. I stood. We were close enough to feel each other's heat. I'm not good at neighbors, I admitted. I moved here to keep things quiet. Her mouth softened. Quiet isn't the same as safe. I should have stepped back. Instead, I asked, who was the man the other night? The air changed. A friend, she said after a pause. Someone who thinks he still has a place in my life. Jealousy flared. Sharp. Unwelcome. Obvious. She noticed. Of course she did. He doesn't like to lose, she added. Neither did I. She reached out. Not dramatic. Just her fingers brushing the back of my hand. Steadying. Grounding. 1 second. That was all it took. I meant what I said, she murmured. I didn't answer. Because if I spoke, I might admit the truth. I wasn't afraid of looking. I was afraid of wanting. And her letting me. She turned toward the kitchen. Gave me an exit. I followed. The kettle began to hum. And just as the room started to feel smaller, there was a knock at the door. 3 sharp taps. And the man from the car stepped inside. The knock didn't sound loud, but it landed hard. 3 sharp taps, confident, practiced the kind of knock that doesn't ask permission. It announces presence. Clara didn't flinch. That alone told me everything. She opened the door, and the man from the car stepped inside like he already belonged there. Late 40s, tailored jacket, relaxed smile. The kind of man who had never learned how to enter a room quietly because he never had to. His eyes found me immediately. Well, he said, stretching the word just enough to make it uncomfortable. I didn't realize you had company. Clara's voice didn't change. Grant, this is Ethan. He's my neighbor. Just a neighbor. Grant smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. He leaned against the counter like it was his counter. Asked questions that sounded polite but carried sharp edges underneath where I worked. How long I'd lived next door. Whether I planned on staying. Each one was a measurement. A test. I answered briefly. Calmly. I felt Clara beside me steady. Unreadable, and I realized something unsettling. She wasn't choosing between us. She was watching. Grant stayed longer than necessary. Long enough to reassert himself. Long enough to remind both of us that history carries weight. When he finally left, his hand brushed her arm on the way out. Not accidental. Not accidental. Not possessive. Intentional. The door closed, and the house felt larger, too quiet. Clara rested her forehead against it for a moment. He's persistent, she said softly. And he's used to winning. I nodded like it didn't matter. It did. We didn't say much after that. I finished fixing the step, packed my tools, thanked her for the coffee. At the door, she hesitated. This doesn't have to be complicated, she said, but it will be if we're not careful. Outside, the night air felt colder than it should have. I didn't sleep. Again. The days that followed were filled with moments too small to explain and too heavy to ignore. Morning greetings that lingered. shared smiles across the fence. Once, I slipped on wet leaves. Her hand caught my elbow without hesitation. Firm, warm. Each touch landed deeper than the last. Grant's car appeared twice more that week. Always late. Always deliberate. I told myself it wasn't my place to feel anything. I failed at that daily. Friday night, my friend Mark dragged me to a quiet bar downtown. He listened, didn't interrupt, let the ice melt in his glass. When I finished, he shook his head. "You're not a kid," he said. "If you're in, be in. If you're out, get out. Just don't hover." His words followed me home, echoed with the engine's hum. Clara was on her porch when I pulled in, wrapped in a cardigan, watching the street like she was waiting for something or deciding whether to. We talked about nothing. Weather, work, a leaky faucet, until the nothing felt heavier than truth. "He asked me to dinner," she said suddenly. "Grant." My stomach dropped. She watched my reaction carefully. I haven't answered. Silence stretched between us. I stepped closer, close enough to feel the space shift. "What do you want?" I asked. The question trembled. She inhaled slowly. "I want something honest," she said, "even if it scares me." I reached out before I could stop myself. My fingers brushed her wrist. She didn't pull away. She looked down at my hand, then back at me, and nodded once. It wasn't rushed. It wasn't desperate. It was gentle, careful, like we were both afraid of breaking something fragile. When it ended, her forehead rested against my chest. Her breathing steadied mine. For one brief moment, everything felt right. And then reality pressed back in. "I need time," she whispered. I understood. I hated it, but I understood. She stepped back, and the distance felt larger than the yard between our houses. That night, lying awake, I realized something painful. I wasn't afraid of Grant. I was afraid that wanting her meant accepting that love at this age comes with consequences, and that walking away would hurt just as much as staying. After that, the distance wasn't physical. It was everywhere else. In unanswered messages. In timing my steps so I wouldn't run into her. I told myself I was respecting her need for time. The truth was simpler. I was afraid that if I saw her again too soon, I'd see the answer in her eyes before she ever said it. A week passed. Grant's car became a fixture on the street, parked just far enough from my house to feel intentional. Then one evening, as the sun dipped low, Clara stood at the fence. No cardigan this time. No uncertainty. "I chose," she said. My chest tightened. I told him goodbye. Relief surged, sharp and immediate, followed by something heavier. "And?" I asked. She met my eyes. "I can't do this," she said. The words hurt more than I expected. "Not because I don't want you," she continued, "but because I finally understand something." I waited. I don't want to begin something that feels like a risk I'm already tired of carrying. Silence. Not cruel. Honest. I nodded. Because at this age, you don't argue with clarity. You respect it. We stood there a moment longer. Then she smiled soft, genuine. "I'm glad you asked me to look," she said, "even if we didn't choose to touch." I watched her walk back to her porch, watched the light go on inside. And that night, for the first time in weeks, I slept. Not because I got what I wanted, but because I understood something I hadn't before. Some connections aren't meant to be lived. They're meant to remind you that you're still capable of feeling. And sometimes, the bravest thing you can do is walk away, not from love, but from the version of it that asks you to lose yourself.